Hey girlfriend, this is Jan James. Welcome to the Hope After Breast Cancer podcast, where women who have endured breast cancer learn to have fulfillment over frustration, clarity over confusion, and faith over fear. We tackle the issues that many of our sisters face after a breast cancer diagnosis, from brain fog to fear of recurrence, from menopause to sex after breast cancer. This is the place to learn how to have hope after breast cancer. So strap yourself in. Welcome to the Hope After Breast Cancer podcast.
Hi everyone, Jan James here from Hope After Breast Cancer. I am really excited to introduce you to one of our very newest contributing experts, Carla Mannes. How are you, girl?
I am just absolutely delighted to be a new expert and to be with you today. Thank you for having me.
Oh, I'm so glad to, it's whatever. This was absolutely a God thing, right? I want to tell this story real quick. I was having lunch with one of our other experts, Amanda Halamka, a couple of weeks ago at Wildflower Cafe. If you don't know, or Wildflower Bread Company, if you guys don't have that, that's something that we have a lot of in Arizona. And we were sitting in a booth, and all of a sudden, incoming, here comes Carla. Carla, you only knew me by miniature picture from Facebook, right?
Yeah, because I follow you. I am one of your followers, yes. And as soon as I saw you, and by the way, I was just picking up lunch for a friend who was moving. I don't even like Wildflower.
Yeah.
So the minute I asked if she could bring lunch, she said yes. I said, I know, from Wildflower. So I went begrudgingly. She wasn't even supposed to be home that day, but she was moving. So I walked in and saw you sitting there and I said, oh my gosh, that's Jan James. That's Jan James, the rock star.
Oh.
So I was sitting there for a minute and in my mind, I thought, I'm not going to let this minute escape me. This is destiny. And I walk over and interrupt you.
It was fantastic. You just said, I'm Carla Mannes. And I was like, oh my gosh, because I certainly knew your name too, because you're a longtime movie buddy, which has been fantastic. Yeah. But the funny thing was, everybody, that Carla, I don't know, she came in hot. She came in and was like, you know what our girls need? And she was just giving it to me. And then Amanda started piping in. Then Carla said, well, I'm a trauma counselor. I'm a trauma counselor. And Amanda said, I'm a trauma counselor. They're high-fiving across the booth. And I was like, I have lost control of everything here. And then the funnier thing is that we were super loud because that's how we roll. But it was so much fun. Carla sat down for a while and we were just gabbing and laughing and loud. And the girl in the booth behind us stood up and came over and said, hey, I couldn't help but hear, that's my favorite line, I couldn't help but hear you guys talking about breast cancer. So I was diagnosed, yada, da, da, da. So now she's part of the Boobie Buddies and part of our tribe too. So
what I loved about what she said is that she said, first of all, I hope I'm not interrupting. She was far more polite than I was because I just did it before. And then she said, you know, I just don't have anybody that really supports me. And Jan immediately said, well, you do now.
Yeah, give me your phone.
And so again, it just goes to show you how non-genetic breast cancer is.
It is. That is the truth, isn't it? So you are also someone who has heard those evil words, right? You have cancer. How long ago were you diagnosed with breast cancer?
I was diagnosed the first time in 2018. I underwent a lumpectomy, got everything. My oncotype score was low. My surgeon at the time was really guiding me, did 10 rounds of brachyradiation therapy. I was not going to do chemo. They talked to me. The radiology oncologist talked to me and I said, no. I went to go see an oncologist. I didn't click with her, didn't go back. I figured I'm going to put this behind me. No mammogram in 2020 because we were all pandemicking.
Right.
And then when I went in February 1st of 2021, the cancer was back. And this time my lymph nodes were involved. And I did the bilateral mastectomy with followed by just months of chemo. And we all know how fun that is. And radiation. So I took it a lot more seriously, obviously the second time, but it also profoundly affected me different. Mm-hmm. It's one thing to go in and come out and have a dimple in your boob and go, I lost a little bit of a boob. It's another to hear the word cancer a second time. And the minute They said to me, there's a really enlarged lymph node. It's turned black. I was terrified. And my surgeon goes, I'm not worried about it. Let's not worry about it. It's nothing. I was always worried about it. So when the pathology came back and they said, you had 9 lymph nodes that were cancerous, then I was really worried. And it's a different scenario. And I started taking it seriously because then I knew the bilateral mastectomy and treatment was coming. And so this put me in a different league. This was like, instead of it's not a big deal, like this is a problem.
Right, right. What type of cancer did you have the first time and then the second time?
So I just had the garden variety ductal carcinoma.
Invasive ductal carcinoma? So
Invasive
that's
ductal carcinoma.
about a third of the breast cancers are
Yep.
that. Okay.
Yep. And by the way, my family heritage is my dad is Ashkenazi Jew on his side of the family, Jewish. And so my cousin had actually gone in for BRCA testing and she tested positive. Her dad died of prostate cancer, which is also tied to the BRCA gene. And what you don't know about me is in 2011, I was diagnosed with pancreatic cancer. And I ended up having a very large surgery called the Whipple, but the tumor was benign. But nonetheless, because of that, and also because I have a little grandson that has cystic fibrosis, they said, we need to go in and check because there could be a genetic, a BRCA tie. And that never happened. So no one in my family had breast cancer. Just me twice.
Here's the dilemma that we face in our community. Something went awry in the media, and I speak of that lovingly because I spent my career in media, right?
Sure.
But something went awry that we all were thinking, it's because there was so much talk about those that had family history that we started to associate it with breast cancer is a family history disease. Well, the real stat is that 85% of women do not have family history when diagnosed. So it's exactly opposite of kind of what we assume, which is really tragic. So whatever.
I think for me, the reason it was much harder the second time is I have a bachelor and master's degree from Arizona State University in social work. And I started seeing the big gaps in the system and the gaps in care and treatment. And it's like, if you're having surgery, your breast surgeon's in charge of your care. When you go to chemo, then your chemo is like your primary care physician. And then if you need something, you never know who to call and it doesn't run smoothly. And they were trying to tell me it was because, of all this COVID. And I said, listen, I'm tired of hearing about it. Okay. You guys are not organized. This needs to be better organized because I'm sure this isn't your first rodeo with me.
Right.
Having breast cancer. So I saw that for instance would be, I did sink into a deep depression after my 4th red devil. It never occurred to me, even as a mental health professional, that chemotherapy would chemically alter my emotional state. It never occurred to me. And by the way, my oncologist never talked to me about it.
Right. Nobody
ever said, hey, let's get ahead of the wave and let's put you on something because after that 4th treatment, you are going to come crashing down.
Right.
And ironically, when I went through my Whipple surgery, my surgeon was on top of it and said, like 5 weeks after surgery, you're going to hit a wall and it's going to be crushing. I was prepared for it.
Oh my goodness.
They had put me on medication prior. But I'm a big advocate for myself. So I ask a lot of questions about why.
Mm-hmm.
I want to know why this is the way it is. And some of my doctors appreciate it and others of them, I probably scare the hell out of them.
Mm-hmm.
But there is such a, what I consider to be you're diagnosed and then you enter this loop. And the feedback loop is one of fear, one of urgency. You need to make decisions right now. Can't stop and think about anything. Need to get in here, need to get your plastic surgeon, get a plastic surgeon because you might be a candidate for immediate reconstruction. And I think that's the thing that upset me the very most is that's the only reason I opted to do any type of reconstruction is I was told you're a prime candidate for reconstruction immediately following your bilateral mastectomy. Now, I'm not a doctor and I don't play one on this video with you, But I'm thinking, how can you guarantee that when you don't know what my pathology is going to come back days later, right? And of course, that's not the case. And as of today, you know this, our other viewers don't know this. I still have my tissue expanders in. My plastic surgeon was dropped from my insurance. So I needed to meet with the new plastic surgeon yesterday. And by the time I get these tissue expanders out, I'll have to have them in 15 months.
Right.
Not part of the original deal. So I feel like there is this loop of, it almost feels at times like buying a used car.
Mm-hmm.
You got to talk to the finance guy. You got to talk to the detailing guy. You got to talk to, and you know, the truth is you're already anxious enough because the word cancer can be overwhelming. I'm surprised at how little navigation there is through this big system when, you know, I don't know what these statistics are. You could probably help me with this, but they're pretty significant in terms of women being treated for breast cancer.
Oh,
So in the practice that I go to at Virginia Piper, which is in Scottsdale, they had one nurse navigator for all the women that they're treating. So this is where I've really appreciated the support from Boobie Buddies. Love the prayer. Loved getting on. And there were many times I was so emotional, I couldn't respond to people because their stories felt so personal to me. And Lori Tolles, who is a friend of mine, who encouraged me
as well. Yeah.
She said to me, I went to go visit her the last 4th of July, and I was still in chemo, and it was rough, but I went to go see her. And she said, you know, Carla, right now you're still in treatment, and you have that little piece of sand up by your eye, and it looks like a boulder. And the further you get from treatment, it's going to feel different. But at the time, it didn't. So now I'm going to be far more helpful to people than I would have been a year ago, because I know that I did survive.
Right.
I do know what that loop is like, and I've appreciated the wisdom of the crowds, which is what we've got going with you, Hope After Breast Cancer, and Boobie Buddies, because I'm not going to talk to my male oncologist or my male radiology oncologist and say, well, how did your breast cancer work? Because they've never had breast cancer, and they can't tell me how they'd feel.
Right. Well, and even if if there was male breast cancer, it's just not the same. I can't tell you how many men try to especially join our Sex After Breast Cancer group because it's got the word sex in it. I think there were like 5 the other day that were all men. And I was like, okay, no, block, you know, so I'm keeping a look on the door. I don't open the door for the wrong people.
Yeah.
So, you know, we need to have a safe place to discuss. And like you said, you know, all of our groups are private for a reason. We need safety. We need a place to vent. We need to be heard. You know, that doesn't happen a lot with the medical community necessarily. There are a lot of great docs out there, but they are wildly overbooked and out of their minds, you know.
Well, and the other thing is when someone does something for work, for instance, and it's their job, it's a job. And it becomes so secondary in nature to them that it's hard to pick people up off the floor who the word cancer is the first time they're hearing it.
Right.
And I look at some of the young women that have joined the group that have little babies at home. My heart hurts because obviously my situation and age were different. But I will tell you a really interesting sensation that I did experience that really took me by surprise was the amount of grief that I felt going through this experience with the initial loss of my hair. When I could go like this and it literally fell out in clumps, I was beside myself. When the breast came off first, I never looked at myself. I didn't want to look. Like, don't tell, like, don't ask, don't tell. And it was a lot. It was a lot to process. And I kept telling myself, well, you need to be really strong for your kids. You need to be really strong. You need to, like, you know, soldier on, marshal through. And the truth is I felt like my femininity had gone out the door. And by the way, I'm not like Fancy Nancy. Like, I'm not that girl. But all of a sudden I didn't have breasts anymore and I was bald. And I just was grieving the loss of this life I knew before breast cancer.
Right.
And
I don't think, Carla, I mean, this is a big problem. And you and I were talking about this before we started recording, but I think one of the beautiful things about you coming on as a trauma counselor is that we're going to start exploring grief. We're going to put women in a place to grieve and say it's okay to grieve. We've got to recognize what we've lost in order to move forward from it, you know, and you have expertise in the grieving and loss process. So I'm super excited about that.
Well, and not only that, but, you know, and by the way, my kids are all adults and they're all married. But the minute mom has cancer, they're little kids at the door again. And by the way, they can't help me because they can't even help themselves with how they're feeling. So I definitely, and you and I have spoken about this, and Amanda, like the three of us like kind of powwow out on this idea, and we're going to flesh this out a little more, but certainly being able to have a place where we can talk about family dynamics and how that comes into play. Some husbands simply don't know what to say. They don't know what to do because they're grieving in a different way, and everybody grieves differently. So we have to be able to recognize that we need to bring our expectations of people that are usually up here, and we need to put them here and realize people that are grieving don't want to hear, I know how you feel. That doesn't help. But when people are grieving, what they want to know is, I support you. Can I sit in your mess? Can I sit with you while the waves pass?
Right.
And I honestly had a couple of really good friends that either flew into town when I was doing Red Devil, would come and stay for the weekends, or friends that would drive over and just stay with me so I wasn't alone. Because going through that level of chemo, I was so ill prepared for how my body was going to respond, and I just didn't feel good.
Right.
Grateful for that. So I'm really excited now to share some of my knowledge and some of my wisdom, but more importantly, to be an anchor and a support for the group, because it's not just you or I in the East Valley that have experienced cancer. There are women all over. And by the way, just because you're married doesn't mean your spouse is going to be super supportive or doesn't know how. There's a lot of women that went through that were single, that didn't have a support, or they lived away from their families.
Right.
And by the way, teenagers can't support you on a good day. Their job is to be teenagers, right?
Right.
So there's so many dynamics. So I'm really excited about the opportunities to explore, to provide greater support for the women of the group.
Yeah, we're really brainstorming a whole bunch of different ideas about how we can virtually bring our community together to take advantage of some of the expertise of our experts in kind of a live fashion. So stay tuned on that. I think it's going to happen because we're all really passionate about bringing that to you. So stay tuned on that.
Well, I'm going to tell you why it's going to happen, because the odds of me going on a Friday to Flower Child are almost nil.
Not Flower Child, Wildflower, but there is.
I'm sorry, Wild. Right? I'm sorry. You know what? You're right. Sorry, everybody. Are almost nil. I'm not exactly sure that day, why you would be literally a stone's throw from where I live. And all of a sudden, I just knew that connection with you was really important. But I also believe that it's not about my timing, but God's timing is always perfect.
Totally.
And He is rolling forth, and He understands the love, the support, the compassion, the communication, the listening. He understands what our dear sisters in our group need, even more than we do. But He just pulls all the raw materials together. It's like we were joking about, what are the odds that He can schedule everybody's time perfectly to rendezvous at the right moment. And so I feel like there is a really divine purpose behind all of this. And whether you believe or you don't, I can't help but believe, because I've been caught up in the eye of the cyclone, but there are too many miracles for me to not believe, and definitely to be grateful. And I always said that if I came out the other side of breast cancer, if I survived that, then I wanted to go back to the vineyard, and I wanted to provide service to those that provided service to me.
That's awesome.
So for me, it's like, let's not only pray it forward, but let's pay it forward. And you've given the opportunity to do that. So I'm looking very forward to whatever we can put our heads together and pull together.
It's an exciting time, really. And honestly, I was so encouraged, meeting you finally in person after, I don't know, how long have you been in the Booby Buddies? Maybe 7, 8 years? Well, let's see, your first time.
No, because the first time I didn't join.
Oh, you didn't? Oh,
I didn't.
Boy.
But what was really funny is, when I had, it's like I said, when I had my lumpectomy, I was pretty flip about the whole thing.
Right,
it was
like done, right.
In and out, who cares?
Right.
A little, yeah. But Lori Tolles reached out to me and she said, listen, she said, I know, as a matter of fact, she came to my house and she said, I know that you may not be ready for this now. And she goes, and by the way, there were times when I was going through treatment, all I could do was scroll. I couldn't comment. But she said, this is available to you. And then I reached out because for whatever reason, I knew I could sense that the battle ahead of me was one like I'd never fought before. And that if I was going to win, the encouragement I'd have to be surrounded with encouragement. And the thing I love about Hope Beyond Breast Cancer and the Booby Buddies is simply this. I'd be up at night because I couldn't sleep. Okay. I'm not going to call a friend because that's not a friend to call him and disrupt him, right? But I could scroll through and I was reading women sharing their experiences, and it was so powerfully moving to me. And then sometimes I'd answer, sometimes I'd cry, but I'd always stop and pray for that sweet sister that needed something. And to me, I love the platform where I used to think meeting in person was the only way to do things, right? And now I'm so grateful for technology and that it allows us to reach across borders that no longer exist, and that we can provide fellowship and support for women that live all over. And that's where I was reaping the benefit of this group and knowing that regardless of day or night or where I was, I could just pull open my phone and just start scrolling. And the ladies, when they were going through and I'd see my name come up, please pray for Carla, she has chemo today. I felt every prayer.
Sweet. Yeah. I mean, there really is some great prayer support in that group too. Yeah.
Oh, I called it my spiritual anesthetic. I was like, okay, guys, bring it on. I got my spiritual anesthetic, whatever you want to do, whatever.
Love that so much. It's awesome.
Yeah. The spiritual anesthetic was great. And then with the radiation, I would ask questions, and I always appreciated someone would say, hey, this is what I did, and I found this brand to be pretty useful. And I just really hung on the words because I knew that I didn't have to be a warrior princess all on my own, because there are great women that have gone trailblazed, have gone before me. And the thing is as we unite, there is such strength in numbers. Booby Buddies is great, but it's better. The bigger, the better. Mm-hmm. And I also feel very strongly about advocating for oneself, because I know there's a lot of women that feel very intimidated when you go to the doctor and he's sitting there as a professional and he's dismissing you or minimizing the fact that you're his patient and you're the one paying to send his kid to college, or her. And so I've written a list of the 10 questions you ask your oncologist. Or your radiology oncologist. And my radiology oncologist and I have a love-hate relationship. I love him and I hate him. And, by the way, he feels the same way about me, so I don't even feel bad sharing that. But I will share a really quick thing. When I was diagnosed the second time, he told me, my radiology oncologist, his name is Dr. Scott Tannehill, and he's out of Piper. He's good. He's the best. And he said to me, I don't know that I would count out not doing chemo. He said I would be concerned about a reoccurrence. So when the reoccurrence happened so quickly, I just thought, I don't want to go back to him and say, you told me so. So I called his office my oncologist called him, and he was on vacation. I scheduled the appointment. The day I was supposed to see him, I canceled. I thought, I'm not going to go see him. I'm not going to have him ruin my day. And at 8:00, at 2 minutes after 8, my phone rang and it's his office. And I'm like, ah. So I answer the phone and he's like, Carla, this is Scott. Why are you coming to see me today? And I'm like, well, because I don't want you to tell me you told me so. And this guy's 6'5". he's really a good looking man. And he got really quiet. He said, do you really think I would do that to you? He said, I wish I didn't have to see you at all. But he said, please don't push me away because I'm part of your team. I want to know how you're doing. So I went down that day, and the first thing he did when he came in and he hugged me, and he said, let's calm down and let's get ready for battle. I would have never anticipated that from him. If you would have ever told me that he would behave that way. So I felt going into it, I had a really good team, but there were a lot of women that didn't. And I want to help women to advocate for themselves. And that's the social worker in me, is, you know, like reaching out and like, what resources can we get you? What do you need? And I just saw the gaps, and we've talked about this, the gap in care. And then you go home and you finish your radiation. It's like, okay, well, we'll see ya. And then you got your scans, and then, okay, well, you know, now take your hormone blocker. Really, is this the best we can do?
It's a lot. It's a lot. Yeah. So no, you know, one of the things that I have said for years, I mean, I was diagnosed 10 years ago and have treatment then, but, you know, it's very much like we're in a chain. We're a group of women that are holding hands, and there are women that have gone before us that are in front of us, as you said, the trailblazers.
Leading.
There are also women behind us that we can grab onto and say, okay, come on. Do you know the man in the hole story?
Yes.
From the West Wing. So just briefly, for those that don't know, the West Wing is an old show that used to be on NBC years ago, and there was an alcoholic on the show that told the story of a man falls in a hole. The walls are steep. He can't get out. He's yelling, help me, help me. And so here comes a priest, and a priest walks by, and it looks down in the hole and says, what are you doing down there? And the guy said, help me out. Father, I need some help. And the priest said, just a minute. So he writes down a prayer, throws it in the hole, and says, have a good day. And off he goes. And the next guy that comes by is a doctor. And the doctor says, what are you doing down there? And the guy says, doctor, help me out. And the doctor writes a prescription, throws it in the hole, and says, have a good day. The next person that comes by is a friend. And the friend says, what are you doing down there? And the guy says, the walls are too steep. I can't get out. I need some help. And the friend jumps in the hole. The guy in the hole says, what are you, stupid or something? And the friend says, I'm not stupid. I've been down here before and I know the way out. That's what we are for one another, right? That is what we do. That is what we do.
Yeah. I absolutely believe that. And obviously, one of the thoughts that crosses my mind when I see new names highlighted in blue, hyperlinked in blue, is to welcome them into the group, and then they share their story. And I can honestly tell you, Jan, when I see new names, be still my beating heart. And the reality is I believe, for what this is worth, that this is less genetic as it is environmental, diet, a lot of things.
Right.
However, when you're in that battle, knowing that you have a support group and people that have gone before you, it's that great quote of, what you've gone through in life will become the survival guide for someone else. Mm-hmm. And that's what I felt the organization has been to me. And sometimes I would ask questions and I'd get hundreds of responses, and sometimes I'd get hearts. But I will tell you, and then another impactful moment is at the Christmas party where we got together in the East Valley. We went to dinner, and that was lovely. And by the way, someone graciously paid for everyone's dinner, which was like so nice. But all of a sudden, people that I'd been communicating with, it was so powerful because now they were people. And I was having conversations. One of those sweet ladies, her and I share the same radiology oncologist. And we joked about how stoic and how doctorish she can be. And I went home that night, and I remember just profoundly thinking to myself, I'd never thought of myself as being lucky with cancer until I realized my experience was something I could manage. It wasn't easy. And there are days I'm dealing with the aftermath. There are days it's still not easy. But I left that night feeling almost renewed and restored, because all of these other women had faced the same thing. Some were all at different, parts of our treatment and stages of our treatment. And at the end of the day, we all had lives. We had stories. And we shared our stories and we broke bread. And to me, that's pretty sacred.
It is neat. And, ladies, for those of you watching, Carla and I are both in the Phoenix, Arizona, US area. We have women in 70 countries around the world, and there's almost 10,000 women that we're serving right now.
Awesome.
And so, not all y'all can get together, in person, but a lot of you can also. So it's fun to do that. But the other thing I'd encourage you to do is, most of us have Messenger. You can just I did it yesterday with one of the gals that posted something in Sex After Breast Cancer that affected me. And I literally just pressed that little video camera on Messenger and I called her and she picked up and we had a great conversation and became really instant girlfriends. And so you can do that with anybody in the groups. You're just able to touch their picture. And then once you're in Messenger, you're able to call them or leave a cheery message or whatever you want to do. So yeah, connection. I've heard of so many great stories of women connecting because of our groups, which is so neat.
It's so cool. And what they don't tell, that what no one told me is I didn't realize the second time out of the gate how isolating cancer felt.
It is totally lonely experience.
And by the way, I don't think you need a pandemic to say that it's lonely.
Oh, right.
Because all of a sudden you worry about being immunocompromised, and then you worry about this, and you're worrying about that. And then when you don't feel good, you're staying at home. And I remember one of the things my sisters would do for me is watermelon was the only thing that would taste good because I had huge sores in my mouth from the red devil. And I lived on watermelon literally for 4 months. And I don't think I ate anything else but watermelon.
Right.
But I did watch every PBS documentary Ken Burns ever did. By the way, my favorite is FDR, just if anybody wants to know. And, the other thing that helped me tremendously is when I started feeling a little bit better, is putting myself out there a little more and doing little things for other people. And what I realized is, it gave me less time to think about my situation,
right.
Which, by the way, you can bring 70,000 thoughts into your life a day. And when you got cancer, probably 69,000 of them can be negative for sure.
Yeah.
So I found a way to give back, whether it was to my kids, whether it was to my sisters, whether it was, and by the way, I've gotten really good. Like, I don't know, Jan, your name specifically did not come up on my dashboard or I would have run to Wildflower. But what I'm going to say is I knew I needed to call Allison and that's what she wanted. And you were there. I've learned to trust my gut where if I get the feeling to reach out to someone, I know it's because there's a need. And that's the one thing I would just encourage anyone within earshot and is listening is God is everywhere all the time because we're here. And if we feel that someone needs something or to just reach out and say, hey, hi, that's a divine wink. That's a message. And we're a messenger. And for those of you that don't follow me on Facebook, and probably most of you don't, yesterday I posted a thought by Rumi, and it was just awesome. And I just want to share this with you really quickly because it's so great. And I hope I didn't delete it because then I'm going to be super embarrassed. Of course I did. Well, hang on. See, Jan, I'm not nearly as organized as you are.
Yeah, if only you could see outside this camera lens.
But what I will say is, let me see here. I don't know why I have such a problem like finding okay, right here. So this thought really resonated with me and I think it's really good. It says, be a lamp, a lifeboat, a ladder, help someone's soul heal, walk out of your house like a shepherd.
Oh, that's sweet.
And yesterday, that was my goal. And I walked out of my house like a shepherd because, the truth is we all need some love. We all need some compassion. And if you don't have that, cancer is a hard road. It's a hard road.
We are delighted that you decided to join our experts team. You'd fit right in with this incredible group there's 20 gals so far, and I don't know. They just keep coming. literally they are coming from a message from LinkedIn, or I mean, they're coming from all different directions. And I'm so grateful. And I told you this before, but you're literally filling the hole that I so desperately wanted to talk about between grief and loss. So ladies, just keep an eye out that you're going to see a lot more from Carla about
We're going to do it.
Yeah.
We're going to provide relief and some tools.
Right.
And most importantly, we're going to sit with you while you're in the mess, because life is messy.
Yeah. We're
always
good.
Messy.
We're good, and we're open 24/7, 365, girls. So don't worry, we're always here. So yeah. Well, Carla, thanks for taking the time today. Just love you, and just so grateful that you've joined the team, and couldn't be more grateful, honestly. Thank you.
Thank you for this lovely introduction. Thank you for having the wisdom and insight to form the group that all of us benefit from. You're a warrior. Even when you were down and out with COVID, you were still making sure everybody got what they need, because I follow you. I stalk you, actually. But the point is, I'm so excited for what's coming. The best is yet to be.
Indeed, indeed, indeed. Okay, ladies, this is Jan James from Hope After Breast Cancer with Carla Mannes signing off. We'll see you next time. Take care.
Girlfriend, thank you so much for listening to our podcast. I hope you found some nuggets to encourage you and give you hope. Make sure you subscribe to the podcast. You never want to miss an episode, and we'd love to know how we're doing, so please be sure to leave us a review. Until next time, this is Jan James encouraging you to remember there is hope after breast cancer. See you next time.